Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. Today, the subcommittee will receive testimony from the Honorable John Phelan, Secretary of the Navy, Admiral James Kilby, Acting Chief of Naval Operations, and General Eric Smith, the Commandant of the United States Marine Corps. Mr. Secretary, congratulations on your appointment. We've already had several productive engagements, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. Admiral Kilby, General Smith, thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate your service. Today we meet at a time of increasing global instability. The Navy and Marine Corps are under extraordinary operational demand, responding to threats across every domain. For the past 19 months, naval forces have engaged daily combat operations in the Red Sea to protect international shipping from Iranian-backed Houthi attacks. These actions underscore the critical role our fleet plays in maintaining freedom of navigation and the security of global commerce. At the same time, we face a rising near-peer challenge in the Indo-Pacific. China continues to build the world's largest navy, surpassing the U.S. Navy in both ship count and shipbuilding capability. China is on pace to surpass the United States Navy in firepower in the coming years. Already today, the Chinese far outnumber us in hypersonic weapons. In any potential conflict with China, the Navy will be the linchpin of our ability to protect and project power across the vast Indo-Pacific region. The sheer scale of that theater demands a capable and ready fleet, and I remain deeply concerned that we are not building or sustaining our naval forces at the pace required to meet that challenge. Years of delay, cost overruns, workforce challenges have slowed production across critical shipbuilding programs, including the Virginia and Columbia-class submarines, Ford-class aircraft carriers, and the Constellation-class frigates. At the same time, the demand for capable, survivable platforms is only increasing. Delays in construction of the lead Columbia-class submarine presents a significant risk to strategic deterrence. I understand that the delivery schedule continues to slip since the 45-day shipbuilding review that was completed last spring. And the Columbia program is now looking at an 18 to 24-month delay in delivering the lead ship. How does this happen to the Navy's priority program? Further, I fear that delays in the Virginia-class program will only be compounded by delays in Columbia-class submarine construction. The Virginia-class program continues to hover at the construction cadence of 1.2 submarines a year versus the necessary cadence of 2 per year. Congress has invested significantly in the submarine industrial base. I want to know when these investments will prove out. While my optimism is waning, I'm hopeful that the recent award of funding for wage and productivity enhancements at the prime shipyards will help turn the tide. Ship maintenance and repair is another significant problem. Too many ships are stuck in yards too long, impacting readiness and deployment schedules. The Navy continues to face serious challenges in sustaining fleet readiness due to persistent maintenance delays across both public and private shipyards. A shortage of skilled labor, aging infrastructure, and inconsistent planning are undermining our ability to execute timely and maintenance availability. The problem carries operational consequences that are immediate and strategic. Delays ripple through deployment schedules, degrade crew morale, strain already overtasked platforms. These readiness shortfalls directly impact the Navy and the Marine Corps' ability to respond to global crisis and surge forces where needed. Without decisive improvements in maintenance execution, we risk building a fleet on paper that cannot meet operational demands in practice. This brings me to the Navy's requirement around amphibious warfare ships. While the Navy is required to maintain a fleet of at least 31 amphibs, the current state of the fleet raises serious doubts about whether that requirement is being met in an operationally credible way. Aging hulls, maintenance delays, and lack of sustained investment have eroded the operational availability of our amphibious fleet, putting real pressure on the Marine Corps' ability to train, deploy, and respond globally. Amphibious ships are not operational assets. They are central to our ability to project power, reassure our allies, and deter adversaries. The committee expects a plan not just to meet the letter of the law, but to ensure that the amphibious fleet is truly capable and ready. We must get shipbuilding back on track, strengthen the industrial base that supports it. That includes looking to expand international cooperation, particularly with close partners like Japan and South Korea, who are developing advanced naval technologies, regional shipbuilding expertise that may present a collaborative opportunity. We need to create solutions to increase output, throughput, expand capacity, and leverage private sector partnerships where possible. Now, I've questioned the Navy's future investment in aircraft carriers, and I think we've seen a valuable discussion as a result. We shouldn't be afraid to have these debates, but I want to be clear today the aircraft carrier serves a critical role in power projection and will most certainly continue to provide the joint force with extraordinary strike warfare and unrivaled air superiority as we enter the Davidson window and beyond. That said, we cannot effectively operate carriers without aircraft. I'm alarmed by the downward trend in Navy's procurement in strike fighter aircraft over the last several years. Today, the Navy faces a growing shortfall in strike fighter aircraft as our carriers sustain a grueling and intense operating tempo in the Red Sea and around the globe. Admiral Pomparo, the Indo-Pacific commander, recently testified that China is outproducing the U.S. in advanced fighters and is now positioned for the first time to surpass the United States in air superiority in the Pacific. I will not parse my words here. We need sixth-generation fighters. The U.S. Navy needs sixth-generation fighters. I'm concerned that any hesitancy on our part to proceed with the planned procurement of the sixth-gen fighters for the Navy will leave us dangerously outmatched in a China fight. We cannot wait. Further, we cannot expect to grow the defense industrial base by undermining it. Aviation programs that rely on highly specialized supply chains and skilled labor cannot be turned on and off like a switch. If we continue sending mixed signals through delayed buys, program instability, or shifting requirements, we risk hollowing out the very industrial base we need for future readiness. We must treat this sector as a strategic asset, not as an afterthought. Over the past year, the Navy has operated under intense and sustained combat conditions in the Red Sea, the most active maritime conflict zone in a generation. Daily missile and drone engagements against Iranian-backed Houthi forces have turned theoretical warfighting concepts into real-life execution under fire. These operations are yielding invaluable insights into missile defense, unmanned system integration, and command and control in a high-threat environment. But this persistent operational tempo comes at a cost. Ships and crews are being pushed hard, deployments are being extended, and readiness for other global contingencies are being strained. The Navy must balance the urgency of today's fight with the imperative to reset, repair, and prepare for tomorrow's challenges. We look forward to hearing how this experience is informing tactical development, force posture, long-term fleet health. The conflict in Ukraine continues to demonstrate how low-cost autonomous systems, especially drones, can deliver outsized battlefield effect against far more expensive platforms. These conflicts are reshaping understanding of warfare, where speed, scale, and adaptability often outweigh traditional measures of strength. Our ability to capitalize on these emerging technologies will depend on how effectively we partner with the private sector. Many of the tools we need, artificial intelligence, autonomy, and edge computing, are being developed outside the traditional defense environment. To keep pace with the rapidly evolving threat environment, the Navy must do more than experiment. It must reduce barriers to entry for commercial innovation and field successful concept quickly and at scale. I look forward to continue to partner with you on supporting and promoting innovation. Over the last several years, the Marine Corps has undergone a significant transformation. This shift to a lighter, more agile, and distributed force capable of operating inside contested maritime space is both bold and necessary. As the Marine Corps pursues new capabilities to support force design, it is essential that its acquisition programs are grounded in rigorous analysis and supported by fulsome, validated requirements to ensure systems are relevant and sustainable and delivered on time. The future of the Marine Corps depends on getting this right, and we're committed to providing the resources and the oversight to make that happen. Before we hear from our witnesses, I'd like to recognize the distinguished ranking member, Ms. McCollum, for any opening comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, Admiral Kilby, this is your first time appearing before the committee. Welcome. Look forward to working with both of you. General Smith, it's a pleasure to see you again, and congratulations on a second-year clean audit. Go Marines. The Marine Corps continues to be the premier example to the rest of the services for responsible budgeting, and I thank you and my constituents thank you for that. As I said in our hearings last week, fiscal year 2026 budget process is off to a very rough start. We just have over 4 months left until the end of 2025. To date, only the skinny budget for the next year has been released, and there's rumors that the full budget may not be released until June. And that's why we have not been able to discuss with any of the services the budget priorities in detail. And that's going to be true for this hearing, unfortunately, as well. It's disappointing because the Department of the Navy programs face long delays and other setbacks. And our committee must have a better understanding of your F-26 priorities. I hope that each of you will reach out to the chair, myself, and to all the members of this committee as soon as details are released. Mr. Secretary, I continue to be concerned about the ability of the Navy and the industry to provide ships and submarines we purchase on time, on budget. And this is something the Chair and I, as you heard from his statement, totally agree on. This has been a challenge for several years, and now the responsibility has fallen to you. We cannot continue to pay for vessels that cost one amount at the start of construction and end up costing dramatically more later this year. I appreciate addressing both the delays and the reinvigorating of the maritime industrial base. That was a focus during your Senate confirmation hearings. You spoke directly to this, and I appreciate that. So I look forward to working with you to ensure that the industry and the government can find solutions to get back on track. I was also pleased to hear during your confirmation hearings that you prioritize the health and safety of our sailors and Marines under your watch. Extended employments can not only hurt the sailor or the Marine, but can also have the possibility of harming their families. Part of the reason for these extended deployments are the delays at the maintenance facility yards in getting our subs and our service vessels in and out of the water. And that, too, needs to be addressed. In last week's hearing with the Army, we discussed the Army's transformative I've got a catch in my throat. We discussed the Army's transformative innovation. Part of the initiative is that the Army's decision to end the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle Program. I have to say, I was dismayed when the Army made this decision and did not consult with the Marines. That is beyond disappointing. Joint means joint. That's what the J stands for. Joint decisions should be informed together as part of joint programs if they need to change. So I look forward to working with you, General Smith, in determining the next steps for this vehicle which your Marines rely upon. And finally, as I said, when the Air Force and the Army were before us, I'm alarmed at the number and the manner in which the Department has decided to implement cuts of civilian personnel. Public shipyards are a personal concern to me. Losing shipyard workers with experience and failing to replace them will only lengthen the problems we are now seeing at these shipyards. Delays will worsen, maintenance schedules will not be executed on time. So, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to hear from you how you will address these personnel cuts in relationship to the public yards. These cuts will also affect the execution of contracts and other vital paperwork. We are already living with the impacts of what happens when civilians take a buyout and stop working on contracts. The contract isn't signed. The mission doesn't get done, and the program falls behind, and it costs the taxpayers more money. I'm also concerned that these cuts will shift responsibility of completing these tasks to the same military personnel that you would like to see most at work, at sea, or on the training field. So once again, I welcome you all to the committee, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. Thank you for the courtesy, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to the chairman of the full committee, my good friend, Chairman Tom Cole.
Thank you very much, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum. It's always a pleasure to be joined by the Ranking Member of the full committee, my good friend from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro. And let me go off my script for a second and just say I appreciate Ranking Member McCollum's remarks about the budget, because she's spot on. We absolutely need it sooner. That's not your fault. I'm not directing that at any of the three of you, but this is one where OMB needs to pick up the pace if we are going to have any chance of getting our work done on time. So thank you, my good friend from Minnesota, for pointing that out. I want to welcome all three of you. Mr. Secretary, delighted to have you confirmed and here with us for the first time. Admiral Kilby, General Smith, again, it's an honor to have both of you with us today. I want to extend my gratitude to you and your commendable and continuing service to our country and to the men and women in uniform that you collectively lead. Today, our Navy's mission has never been more consequential or expansive. From the contested waters of the Indo-Pacific to the turbulent Red Sea, our Navy and Marine Corps are on the front lines of deterring aggression, projecting power, and upholding the rules-based international order. We're all deeply grateful for the bravery and professionalism shown by our sailors and Marines, especially those operating today in harm's way in the Middle East. The Navy's persistent operations in the Red Sea under extremely dangerous and demanding conditions have prevented countless attacks on international shipping and ensured the continued flow of commerce. These missions have not come without cost, and they are a stark reminder that our naval forces must be ready to respond decisively across the full spectrum of conflict. While we await the full details of the White House budget request for the Department of Defense, this hearing will serve as an opportunity to address a range of issues that face the Navy and the Marine Corps. One area of particular concern is the state of our shipbuilding enterprise. We continue to see troubling delays in the delivery of key platforms, including the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, the Constellation-class frigate, and the Virginia-class attack submarines. These delays not only impact operational readiness, but they also create a growing strategic risk at a time when China is expanding its fleet at an unprecedented pace. This is not a new concern. The Trump administration rightly recognized the importance of recapitalizing our fleet with its executive order aimed at revitalizing American shipbuilding to better position the force to achieve a 381-ship Navy. While that goal remains aspirational, it should continue to guide our efforts as we consider how to strengthen our industrial-based capacity, streamline procurement timelines, and demand greater accountability in program execution. We'll also want to hear more about the Navy's evolving posture in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in light of China's coercive actions near Taiwan, in the South China Sea, and beyond. Maintaining a forward, flexible presence in the region is essential to deterring conflict and reassuring our allies and partners. The growth of unmanned systems, which my friend Chairman Calvert referred to, on the surface, undersea, and in the air, is another area of intense interest. The Department has made strides in experimentation and prototyping, but the path toward large-scale integration remains unclear. We'll want to know how unmanned platforms are being incorporated into the fleet, what operational value they're expected to provide, and on what schedule they will be delivered. Turning to the Marine Corps, we appreciate the continued implementation of Force Design 2030, which reflects a bold and forward-looking approach to modernizing the Corps for distributed operations in contested environments. We look forward to hearing from General Smith about how force design is progressing, what challenges remain, and how the Corps is adapting to lessons learned from the exercises and real-world operations. Strategic deterrence is also a key focus of this hearing. In addition to its role as the steward of the sea-based leg of the nuclear triad, the Navy is also responsible for maintaining the TACAMO mission, our survivable airborne communications link between national leadership and nuclear forces. As the Navy moves forward with the recapitalization of this critical capability through the EXX aircraft program, it's essential that the Department stay on track and avoid the cost and schedule issues that have plagued other major acquisitions. We are also aware of recent discussions about potentially transferring elements of the TACAMO mission to the Air Force. This subcommittee will want to understand the rationale behind such a move, its impact on operational effectiveness, and what it could mean for program stability going forward. Of course, none of these platforms, strategies, or technologies matter without the people who bring them to life. Recruiting and retention remain pressing challenges across the force, although I know certain progress has been made in recent months. Both the Navy and Marine Corps have had to grapple with difficult operational tempos, quality of life issues, and a competitive labor market. We will continue to support efforts to improve housing, family support programs, and the health care of our service members. I want to close by thanking each of you again for being here and for your service. I also want to thank the dedicated men and women of your branches, uniformed and civilian alike, who continue to operate in every corner of the world on behalf of the American people. We look forward to your testimony and a frank discussion about the challenges you face and the resources you need to meet them. Again, thank you for being here today. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the Chairman. I'd now like to turn to the Ranking Member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro, for any opening comments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I thank you and Ranking Member McCollum and Chairman Cole for holding this hearing on the plans for the Department of Navy in the coming year. I thank you to the witnesses, Secretary Phelan, General Smith, and Admiral Kilby, for your appearing before us today and for your dedicated service to our nation. You keep our nation safe. You keep our sailors and Marines safe. You ensure that our allies are supported wherever democracy and freedom are threatened around the world. Today, I look forward to learning about what the Navy is doing to get our shipbuilding back on track, especially with regard to submarines. It is critical for our national security that the Navy returns to a regular production of 2 Virginia-class submarines per year, and that the Columbia-class gets as close to schedule as possible. We need to understand how the administration plans to work with Congress to ensure that that happens. Our ability to deter and respond to threats around the globe is counting on it. I also am eager to hear more about how the Marine Corps will utilize the CH-53K program, how it will evolve into the future. We must always work to ensure our service members have the best possible equipment to defend our nation, and American-made Sikorsky helicopters are the best in the world. I want to ensure the CH-53 platform continues to serve as the backbone of the Marine Corps' heavy lift fleet. Additionally, I want to hear about what we're doing to modernize the Navy's workforce. I am very concerned to hear that the Department of the Navy will be losing about 16,000 civilian workers, including workers at our public shipyards. The Navy must work with the Congress and with our industry partners to ensure that we have a highly trained workforce that is ready to get the job done and respond to constantly evolving threats. And we all know that when you destroy the infrastructure and hollow out the agencies, that we cannot bring that back, and with how quickly we would need to do that. So we should not be in the business of destroying our infrastructure. Also pertaining to the workforce, it is deeply regrettable that the administration is choosing to inject culture war debates into the Department of Defense funding process. And I am concerned with how that may hurt further recruitment efforts, especially among women. We must do all that we can to ensure that any American who wants to bravely serve in the United States Armed Forces, defend our nation, feels that they belong and that they are not going to be drawn into political warfare while confronting legitimate threats to freedom, to democracy, and our national security. I thank you again, all of you, for being here today. Look forward to listening to you, and I yield back. Mr. Chairman, I am going to dash to Homeland Security. For a portion of that, we'll be back for questions. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Gentlemen, your full written testimony will be placed on the record. Please give a brief summary of your statements. Secretary Phelan, the floor is yours.
Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored to appear before you alongside General Smith and Admiral Kilby to discuss the posture of the Department of the Navy. I'm grateful to President Trump for the trust he's placed in me to lead the nearly 1 million sailors, Marines, and civilians who make up our maritime force. My North Star, our #1 priority as Secretary, is the readiness of our sailors and Marines. I will lead this department with 3 focus areas that will guide our Navy and Marine Corps: strengthen shipbuilding and the maritime industrial base, foster an adaptive, accountable, and innovative warfighter culture, improve the health, welfare, and training of our people. In my first 30 days as SecNav, I visited the Indo-Pacific, the southern border, the Gulf of America, several of our installations, and 8 public and private shipyards to see our operations and challenges firsthand. I look forward to sharing my observations with you today. The United States commands the most powerful maritime force in the world, but that dominance is under threat. China continues to expand its fleet, build more advanced submarines, and operate more provocatively and aggressively in contested waters. In the Red Sea, our warfighters are leading Operation Prosperity Guardian, defending freedom of navigation. They're doing an excellent job. At CENTCOM headquarters, I witnessed these operations and saw firsthand the professionalism and expertise of our forces operating in this area. Closer to home, our maritime forces are working with federal agencies to disrupt drug and human trafficking, helping to further secure our borders. On my second day in office, I visited the USS Gravely in the Gulf of America and flew surveillance missions with Patrol Squadron 26. While our forces remain steady, rebuilding our hollowed-out maritime industrial base is a national security imperative. As outlined in the Restoring America's Maritime Dominance Executive Order signed by President Trump on April 9th. Over the past month, I visited those 8 shipyards across the nation's East Coast and the Indo-Pacific. I spoke directly with shipyard leaders and the hardworking tradesmen essential to our maritime operations. I now have a clear picture of where our shipbuilding dollars have been going and am developing a plan to fix what's broken. As the nation's first line of defense, the Navy and Marine Corps play an indispensable role in securing national interests and protecting our way of life. However, to truly strengthen our defense posture, we must first ensure that the Department of the Navy is accountable to the American taxpayer. Accountability is not just a regulatory requirement. It is the bedrock upon which we will build a stronger, more efficient Navy and Marine Corps. To instill an environment of adaptability and warfighting culture, we must first demonstrate sound business practices and financial discipline. Under my leadership, the Department of the Navy will achieve a clean audit, following the example set by the Marine Corps, which has completed 2 consecutive unmodified audits. We will leverage technology to drive smarter decision-making, adopting lean management practices to eliminate unnecessary overhead, and building relationships with private industry to access cutting-edge solutions. As we confront the mounting challenges of shipbuilding and warfighting readiness, it is clear that our greatest asset is the extraordinary men and women who serve, our sailors and Marines. We will continue to invest in recruiting, training, and retaining the highest caliber personnel. We will prioritize quality of life and quality of service initiatives to ensure that our sailors, Marines, and their families have the resources available to succeed. During my travels, I visited a number of barracks, and although our new barracks are good, I was appalled by the condition of some of our older barracks. I will hold leadership and industry accountable until we deliver the standard of living our service members deserve. As former President and Assistant Secretary of the Navy Theodore Roosevelt once told Congress, a good Navy is not a provocation to war. It is the surest guarantee of peace. That guarantee begins with hard work, and I'm committed to putting in the effort our warfighters deserve while working alongside this committee to build and maintain a force strong enough to deter conflict and preserve peace. I'm honored to serve the nation and guide the world's greatest maritime force through these uncharted waters. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I now recognize Admiral Kilby for your remarks.
Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, Chairman Cole, subcommittee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the priorities of the United States Navy. Your Navy provides the nation with sea power and sea control needed to preserve our way of life and ensure our security and prosperity. Your oversight and funding ensure we are ready when the nation calls. I'm pleased to testify alongside Secretary Phelan, who brings the needed and unique skill set and experience to help us accelerate the work of our Navy, and alongside my partner, General Smith, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. In the past year, our sailors have defeated hundreds of drones and missiles and executed dozens of offensive strikes in the Red Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean. They have strengthened alliances and deterred Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific. They have supported operations on the southern border, and they have maintained an unbroken strategic deterrent with our ballistic missile defense submarines. In short, our Navy integrated with the Joint Force remains postured to ready to fight and win. We remain committed to a strong global Navy, one that is prepared to defend our homeland, deter our adversaries, and prevail in war. We are laser focused on China as our most consequential opponent while strengthening defense of the homeland. We prioritize operations, training, and readiness accounts to ensure our naval forces remain ready, resilient, and agile to execute national tasking. The Navy and Marine Corps preserves peace through strength, through investments in our strategic deterrence, our defense industrial base, and our installations, via initiatives like the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. Most importantly, we are continuing to have a strong commitment to our people, our sailors, our Navy families, and our civilians through pay raises, investments in quality of service initiatives, and unaccompanied housing and child care. But we are facing some challenges. First, the Navy has 23,200 gaps at sea. Thanks to process improvements and targeted investments, we are on plan to reduce that number significantly by the close of FY26. We are committed to attracting and developing Americans who can innovate, solve hard problems, and dominate in combat. The Navy contracted over 40,000 sailors last year, the most since 2003, and we are currently on pace to exceed our recruiting goal for FY25. Second, our ordnance expenditures in the Red Sea have highlighted the strain on our munitions industrial base. The Navy is working with both our traditional primes and new entrants to close this gap, developing kinetic and non-kinetic weapons at speed and at scale. And third, our platforms are not as ready as they need to be. We set an ambitious goal to make 80% of our ships, submarines, and aircraft combat surge ready by January 1st, 2027. To do that, we are reducing maintenance delays, we are improving manning, training, modernization, and sustainment. In all of these efforts, consistent and predictable funding is foundational. We appreciate the continued support of this committee. In closing, I'm proud of our Navy accomplishments in the last year, and I'm excited about the growing consensus that is powering our maritime rejuvenation. The whole of government and whole of nation effort is essential to our security and prosperity. We have work to do to ensure that we remain the world's most premier maritime force for another 250 years. Your leadership and support are critical in achieving this imperative. On behalf of our sailors, civilians, and families around the world, I thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. I now recognize General Smith for your remarks.
Good afternoon. Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, Chair Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to appear before you today alongside Secretary Phelan and Admiral Kilby, my shipmate. I'm here for you on behalf of your Marine Corps, and I look forward to answering your questions. First, I'd like to start by sharing the Marine Corps' top 3 priorities. First, restoring a 3.0 amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. This is the Marine Corps' North Star. That's 1 amphibious ready group constantly deployed off the East Coast, 1 constantly deployed off the West Coast, and 1 amphibious ready group episodically deployed out of the FDNF, the Forward Deployed Naval Force in Japan. The amphibious ready group with Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked is the most versatile tool in our nation's arsenal. It is the Swiss Army knife of the Joint Force, and we're working closely with our Navy partners to maximize this capability. Our second priority is accelerating force design. Force design is our righteous journey to adapt to the changing character of war. The nature of war remains the same, but the character changes. We are in the implementation phase. We're fielding new capabilities time now and reshaping formations across the force, from our Marine Expeditionary Units and Marine Littoral Regiments to our Marine Expeditionary Forces. And finally, improving quality of life. Every Marine deserves a clean, safe place to lay their head at night. They don't ask for much, but they do ask for that. Barracks 2030 is how we're getting after this. It is the most consequential housing investment in Marine Corps history. And quality of life goes beyond our barracks. we're also investing in the well-being of Marine families, because retaining our Marines means supporting those who stand by them. We say you recruit the Marine, but you retain the family. I'll close with this. Your Marines remain the most ready when the nation is least ready. It's who we are. It's our foundation. A forward-postured force, trained for combat, and built to deliver flexible, lethal options anywhere, anytime. Thank you again for your trust and support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. I'll first recognize myself for 5 minutes before we get into questions for both sides. Obviously, Mr. Secretary, the committee is continually concerned about the reported 18 to 24-month delay in the Columbia-class submarine program. As you know, the retirement timeline for the Ohio-class boats is apparently, unless I'm corrected on this, is non-negotiable due to the aging hulls, which means any further delay in Columbia directly threatens our ability to meet STRATCOM's minimum deterrence requirement. As you well know, the significant part of our nuclear deterrent is carried on the Columbia, will be carried on the Columbia program. Secretary Phelan and maybe Admiral Kilby may want to come into this too. You can walk us through the primary drivers behind the additional 18 to 24-month delay of the Columbia-class submarine program, and beyond the issues we've already seen, whether supply chain disruptions, workforce shortages, or integration challenges, what risks remain most concerning to you as we look ahead?
Thank you for the question. I know it's an important issue to you and top priority for myself and Admiral Kilby as well. I think it is a combination of a first-of-class ship, still an inexperienced workforce. It is supply chain issues. It is also a lack of modernization in some of this in some of the plants. And I think honestly, it's just sitting and going and talking to the workers and ways of improving workflow. And so these are things that I've met with the CEO of General Dynamics and Huntington Ingalls to talk about this and go through it. It was very interesting in some of their assessments of what they did not perceive to be as problems, where when I went and sat down with the workers, I got completely the opposite. So let me just give you a couple of examples which might help you understand in ways we think we can shift the schedule left. So in Japan, I went to JMU. They get the productivity out of 1 8-hour shift that we get out of 3 shifts. I believe that's for 2 reasons. One, their average worker is 50 years old. It is a career. They spend time there. They've been in that shipyard a very long time. 2, when I spoke to the welders in Japan, they spend 0 time on paperwork. Our welders spend between 30 and 40% of their time filling out paperwork to match designs, etc. That is a problem. The training, when they come from training and get actually on site, it's completely different. So these are things that they need to work on, and I've spoken to General Dynamics about it. We are working on a couple of different other ideas as well. There were a couple things I saw at Bath Iron Works, to be honest, that were excellent. And there were some things being implemented at Portsmouth that were really good that we need to start to integrate and do. This is a very big concern. I do think we can get the calendar shifted left, but it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, and it is my number 1 priority right now, given the strategic importance of this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that. Admiral, if you want to add anything to that?
I think the Secretary covered it. I do have the same concerns he does. I have the same observations about maturity of workforce and skilled labor. So at our public yards and our private yards, there has been a loss of that experience. So the supervisors don't have the same experience they used to. That's an important thing for us to correct. Additionally, we're looking at extending those hulls in our Ohio class. that can make sure we don't have a gap in strategic deterrence. The first one is USS Alaska, which will extend through APIRA in 2029, and there are 4 additional hulls. So I think that's a insurance policy to make sure that we are still the most survivable leg of the nuclear triad, sir.
Thank you for that. It's interesting to note that what's going on in Japan and South Korea, where they have a significant amount of the world's shipbuilding capability, is you know, we've dropped now to what, 3% of shipbuilding worldwide. The Chinese are what, 50% of ship construction. The Japanese and the Koreans are about 35-40% combined, and then the rest of the world. And so it's disappointing that we've got ourselves in this situation. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, as you mentioned, Mr. Secretary, to straighten this out. Ms. McCollum, you wanted me to recognize Mr. Cuellar. Mr. Cuellar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking. Thank you. We got to go same place, talk to Coast Guard. But just first of all, Admiral and Mr. Secretary, Admiral, and I think a fellow Texan also, General, thank you for the service that you provided. A couple of things. One, the military does bring some skills and assets that the Department of Homeland doesn't do. So, like, if you can follow up on that and what y'all bring to it. It's not only the southern border, but of course we got the coast, as you know. Number one. Number two, you know, the law already calls for operational and regulatory efficiency reviews. The law already calls for contracting and procurement standards. The law already calls for quarterly performance updates. The law already requires development submissions of updated performance measures. I'd like to just focus on the contracting and procurement standard, as it's been brought up by both the chairman and the ranking member, is why can we not do things on budget and on time? I mean, if the Chinese can do it, the Japanese can do it, and other folks can do it, you know, we always come up, well, we got workforce development, all that, but why can, you know, there's already penalties there for monetary penalties, suspension of work, and other things under the law. You know, we keep coming up with excuses, but you got other countries that keep doing this. On budget and on time are the two factors. Finally, the last thing, and you can follow up on this later on, in my San Antonio area, as you know, there's been different suspension of contracts. There is one in particular that had to do with some data, a data contract that deals with service members' records, data for promotion boards, and other thing. And again, this contract was, you know, we think it was necessary and it was performing, but then you all cut it. I don't want you to take up the time now, but have somebody follow up on that. But I'd like to go and if you can mention a little bit on border security, what you bring in that Homeland doesn't have, but more importantly, on budget and on time, and why other countries can do it and we can't.
Why don't we start with the border piece, and then we can go to another question. So from the Navy's perspective, 30 intelligence specialists on the border helping with the southern border, 58 P-8 sorties for intelligence and surveillance, and now 3 ships. And Minneapolis St. Paul is a littoral combat ship, as well as 2 destroyers, and they relieved 2 destroyers. So the presence for counter drug flow, counter immigration, there's a maritime component of that the Navy is performing and has performed for a long time. The first time I got underway on a ship in 1987, we had a law enforcement detachment, and that's something the Coast Guard and the Navy are really good at doing together to extend the reach of the Coast Guard.
Sir, in terms of the Marines, our 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, based out of Camp Pendleton, California, is operating on the southern border. They're doing engineer tasks. They're constructing concertina wire. They're building obstacles. They're doing what they do, so they're continuing to get the training that they would normally get at Camp Pendleton. They're just getting on the southern border. But that's our contribution as our 1st Combat Engineer Battalion.
Just real quick, just on the border as well. I mean, I think the Navy, since its inception, has been a homeland defense organization. They work with the Coast Guard. They do ballistic missile defense, and keeping sea lanes and trade lanes open has been part of their job since inception. So I think it's a very important aspect to what they do. In terms of on time, on budget, I think it's a number of different things. One, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the industrial base has been hollowed out. We have lost a lot of manufacturing and our ability to manufacture. We've had prior conflicts where we've spent a lot of money, and the bills for our deferred infrastructure spend, whether that's piers, docks, is now coming due. And it's been going on for a while. And so these are not new problems. I mean, I've looked back at testimony 20 years, I keep hearing the same things. I'm trying to figure out why it hasn't been fixed, to be perfectly honest. But I will tell you, I think it's a combination of bureaucracy. So just to give you an example, in the Navy, in acquisitions alone, we have 56,000 people in our acquisitions department. Now, we did last year 217,000 contracts. That's 34 contracts per person. That's 2 contracts a month. Something's off. I keep trying to understand what are all these people doing. And these are complicated contracts, but I'll also be honest, when I look at our contracting, it's poor. We don't control our IP. We can't repair stuff. We don't have very good penalties built in for lack of performance. These are all things we are going to really try to change. And I kind of called it in my confirmation hearing, shared risk. I think it's great for the private sector to make money, and they should. But they should be paid according to the risk that they take. And that is not going on right now. And we need to fix that. So it is not an easy solution, but it has our focus, and we are going to get it fixed. It will take time. We will be very transparent with all of you and walk you through and tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and try to get it sorted.
Thank you. Chairman Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to something I mentioned in my opening statement, Secretary Phelan. Could you tell us whether or not that we're looking at restructuring the TACAMO mission, and whether or not we're looking at offloading some of those functions that it currently provides to the Air Force?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. I think I'm going to let Admiral Kilby answer that, but let me just give you my thoughts. Look, the investments in both the E-6B and its replacement, the E-130, are critical to nuclear modernization. I'm committed to improving that. It is a critical part. And then I'll let Admiral Kilby comment on your specific question.
Yes, sir. So as Secretary Phelan said, the E-6, which you now know so much about, has served us well. We need to make sure that aircraft gets through its service life and is replaced by its replacement. There is another mission assigned to that aircraft now, the ABINCAP mission, and that is the mission that needs a platform or a home, because the EC-130 just does not have the room in it that the E-6 does to perform both those missions. But most important, and I agree with Secretary Phelan, we must stay on track for the TACAMO replacement program. We've gotten more than our money's worth out of the E-6s. We've had this empennage problem, and we're repairing those aircraft to make sure they're safe to fly, to provide continuity of NC-3. But I'm committed to the TACAMO replacement program and staying on budget and on delivery for that, so we can do what we do for the nation.
And again, just to not be redundant, but to be specific, are we talking about any of that mission moving to the Air Force, or are we talking about keeping it within the Navy?
That's a discussion still at the Department of Defense. The part I specifically talked about, though, was it will not go into the EC-130 replacement, because there's just no room for the kit for that aircraft. So there's a limitation to what the 130 can do, and it's a performance gain for us, we think, in the execution of NC-3. So we'll have to figure out, as a department, the Department of Defense, what happens to that initial mission, and it may not be an aircraft. It might be another means to provide that secure comms.
Well, I would ask you to keep us apprised of that. And I will tell you, since I've got a lot of E-6s based out of my district, and E-3s that are all being retired from the Air Force, where we're having to scramble to find replacements, I'm not sure the Air Force would have the capacity to do some of the things you need to do. So, again, I would very much like to know when and if that decision's made. Let me ask you two quickly, if I may, and I put this to all of you, and Chairman Calvert raised it. I'm very concerned about where we're at in terms of munitions, in terms of what's available, what you need, what we would have if, God forbid, we were in a short-term conflict. It would be short-term because we don't have enough munitions to sustain a long-term fight. So where are we at in procurement and stockpiling of the munitions, particularly precision strike types of munitions that you think you would need in a conflict with a near-peer power?
Sure, I'll take that one just for the Navy. We are investing in the munitions we need, particularly to be ready to, if we need to go to war with China. Those are precision-guided, long-range munitions like Tomahawk, Maritime Strike Tomahawk, LRASM, SM-6, SM-2, ARGM, AIM-9X, AIM-120, and the heavyweight torpedo. So all those munitions we need to increase production on. I'm also of the mind that we need to look at other vendors, and they may not be able to produce the same exact specification, but they might be able to produce a missile that's effective, which is more effective than no missile. So I think we've got to open our aperture a little bit, but those munitions that I listed, we need to increase production. And we've done so with things like the SM-6, which used to have 125 rounds a year. We're ramping up to 300 rounds a year. We've restarted our Mark 48 line. That's our premier torpedo. We stopped doing torpedoes in 1996 and now have just reconstituted that line and are going to deliver 10 a month. So that's 120 a year. That's a step in the right direction. But we need to stop looking, like I have, at the minimum sustaining rate and look at what we need for protraction. I think it's foolish to think that we're going to be in a short, sharp war. If we go to war with China, this is going to be a big deal, and it's going to be bloody, and there's going to be casualties, and it's going to take time and munitions. So our stocks need to be full.
Well, again, I would ask you to keep us informed on that and what we can do to accelerate that process, because I think we're all very, very concerned. And I'm glad to hear you're looking at alternatives, because I think you're exactly right. I'm not sure the capacity exists in the traditional munitions that we have to do it in a short-term and speedy fashion. Last question, if I could get to you quickly, General Smith. I'm just curious your assessment where we're at on Force Design 2030. How are things going? Are you on schedule?
Well, sir, thanks for that question. Sir, we are on schedule. I'm committed to force design balanced against our crisis response and readiness missions. We're investing in key capabilities such as unmanned systems, long-range precision fires, which you addressed, air defenses, counter small UAS. We're enabling modernization while retaining our capability for competition and crisis response, which is our nom de guerre. It preserves the capability of the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Based on combat operational employments, the COCOMs have asked us to accelerate some of our capabilities, such as the MQ-9. Our big-wing drone. Pair that with MATIS, our Marine Air Defense System, and an MRIC, a medium-range intercept capability, and we are well on our way to realizing the value of force design as a stand-in force to enable us to deter the PRC from, I won't say breaking out, but breaking out, and if they do, to punish them for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to recognize the ranking member, Ms. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, you were very refreshing in your confirmation hearings with what the learning curve you were going to take on. You've been on the job for less than 2 months, and here you are without a full budget in front of us asking a lot of questions. But I'm going to, as a school teacher, I'm going to just press one more time for an answer for the question. We haven't had two-sub production, I've been told, since before COVID. So you've been out talking to people, looking at the shipyards, looking at workforce. You're doing your due diligence, but we will start marking up a budget in June. So do you have any idea of when maybe you can come before the committee and tell us when we can expect to get back to 2 subs a year? Because the budget? I mean, what kind of conversations are happening at the Pentagon about how we get back on track? And are they giving you all the flexibility to put this priority number one to move forward? The other problem we discussed is the backlog for maintenance in the shipyards. And you just mentioned with the Admiral 2 now, with what's happening with the hulls in the Ohio class, that's something else you're going to be bringing into the shipyard, and there's already backlog there. So I know you're putting all the pieces in the puzzle together. It's been 2 months. You're taking this extraordinarily seriously. I want to be fair and recognize that. But I have a job to do too, as long as with these committee members. Do you have any idea when you think you might be able to come back in front of the committee within the next month, 2 months, with any kind of a plan and anything we have to look at for the allocation of dollars to get you back on track?
Thank you for the question. I would tell you that I've been working very hard with the DepSec and SecDef on this issue. It's been a high priority for them, as it is for us. I think that we are trying to attack this problem from a number of different angles to try to figure it out and get a better idea. I'd like to believe that we should be able to come sit down with you hopefully within the next month or 2 months. Give me a little bit of decision space time because we're still trying to get this all put together. You know, a lot of what the companies will tell you is that we took people off of Virginia and put them on Columbia, which set them back on Virginia. I'm trying to understand this because I think part of the problem also is there are materials they're waiting on. They take workers and shift them from a Columbia to a Virginia, which does not make sense. That is something that does not happen in the Korean shipyards or the Japanese shipyards that I visited. I saw a fair amount of automation at the Korean shipyards that I've not seen in our yards that I think will help things in a big way. And that doesn't, a lot of people think that means less jobs. It actually doesn't. It just means different types of jobs because those machines still need to be watched and kept abreast in what they're doing. So it's a different type of training. As soon as I have an answer, I will come and sit down and give you the honest truth on what I think what's the best we can do schedule-wise and what we think these are going to be and how quickly we can fix that problem. But it would be, I'm on day 50, so a little tough to give you that.
I appreciate that because, the President has put forward all kinds of things, top priorities, Sentinel, which is a huge boondoggle cost overrun that this committee is having to deal with, and the concept, as it's been described in this hearing room, the concept of what Golden Dome is going to look like. For me, we've got a task in front of us that's not been completed, and for me, that's my first priority, my first mission. So I appreciate that. Along with that, the chairman and I had the opportunity to go to Australia last year with some other committee members, and do you think with the AUKUS that we're going to be able to meet our requirements that are included in that agreement? Is that part of the calculus on how we get back on track?
Hey, just maybe a little more, because I've been working this a little bit longer than the Secretary. So we have accepted money from Australia to get to the 0.33 part of 2.33. We have Australia workers at our Pearl Harbor Navy shipyard. We have maintained and done some availabilities in Sterling. I think those are all on plan for AUKUS Phase 1, and that's helpful to us. But to your point, man, we have to get to the 2 and then to get to the 2.33. So I think all that in conjunction with each other is what we're going to try to bring to bear, including the investments we've supported by you, which we're appreciative of, on both SIB and MIB. I think are key to clutch in, and that dividend will make parts more available, and we'll be able to do our work faster. So it is, Phase 1 is on plan now, and we just need to watch it because working with two countries, we've come across some things we didn't expect as far as bureaucratic roadblocks to getting workers in certain places. So I think we're on it, we're going to stay with it, and I think it's important for the whole effort.
Thank you. And then lastly, Mr. Chair, General Smith, we had an opportunity to talk just briefly about this and the decision for the Army to cut the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle came as much as a surprise to you as it did to this committee. So if you could maybe share with some of the other members of the committee how you think these cuts could impact you both presently and in the future, and what happens with the cost per unit for these vehicles for your budget as you were getting ready to prepare it.
Yes, ma'am. The Marine Corps is fully committed to the JLTV program. It is our workhorse on the ground tactical vehicle fleet. It's a little bit too early to assess the impact of the Army stopping their version of the program, but per unit costs are clearly going to go up. The APUC, the average per unit cost, is going to go up when the orders go down, and that's going to negatively impact the Marine Corps' ability to fulfill its ground tactical vehicle mobility strategy, which has me concerned.
Well, when you have those numbers, we would appreciate receiving them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, gentlelady. I just want to make a point, too. Our former colleague, Rahm Emanuel, who was the ambassador to Japan, would call me, and I know he called the full committee chairman from time to time, pointing out that Japan has significant shipyard capability and capacity to help us with the maintenance of our ships without having to send them back on us. And right now, apparently, we don't, there's some scheduling issues with some of the yards. So I hope, Mr. Secretary, you're looking at some of our colleagues in Japan and South Korea that are great allies maybe can help get you where you need to be. So.
Thank you for the question, Chairman. Look, all options are on the table, and I was very impressed by what I saw in Korea and Japan. I saw 2 ships that they did maintenance work in Korea for us. Excellent. I actually saw a DDG destroyer they made, which is 10% bigger than ours, which, by the way, was an excellent ship. I even think the Combat Information Center was laid out better than ours, looking at it. So I think we have to really look at this, and I think I kind of bucket it in 2 ways. There's short-term things we need to do because we need to get hulls in the water, and there's long-term, and the long-term is getting the maritime industrial base, getting the jobs, getting those brought back here. I think, you've seen what Hanwha did with Philly, with the Philly shipyard. They're very interested in expanding some of their work here. We have to put everything on the table. We are at that sort of kind of period of time, and so, yes, we will definitely be looking into that.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, the Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, let me discuss with you naval drug interdiction. The Navy has a history of reliability issues with littoral combat ships, but plans to decommission those ships have halted due to other potential use cases such as drug interdiction missions. The Navy's littoral combat ship has recently gotten some praise for its success in those drug interdiction missions. In April of this year, the Minneapolis-St. Paul, a Freedom Variant LCS, stopped 2 suspected drug smuggling operations within 72 hours through a combination of air and surface operations in the Caribbean Sea. The successful operation that I've described is one of several good examples in recent years of an LCS interdicting drug smuggling operations. In 2020, the USS Gabrielle Gifford stopped a vessel in the Eastern Pacific that was carrying $106 million worth of cocaine. In 2021, USS Wichita and USS Sioux City seized $17 million and more than $20 million worth of cocaine. These littoral ships, they're fast, they carry helicopters, they have air and surface search radars, all of which are very helpful in stopping drug smuggling operations. These ships are also armed with missiles. They're unlikely to be used against drug smugglers due to the costs of the munitions. Of all the Navy's warships, the LCS is probably the best choice for counter-drug missions. But the program has been repeatedly described as a costly misstep for the sea service. The two classes of small but fast warships were designed to operate in littoral near-shore waters and primarily seen as a solution to an unclear problem. Due to technical issues, the service has opted to retire some of the oldest vessels years before their end of service life. Others would be pawned off to regional partners and allies. In 2025, just recently, the Navy stopped buying LCSs, halting production at the current 28 ships, rather than moving forward with the 52 that was originally planned. What can you say about this? Are we going in the right path?
Sir, if I could start and then turn it over to the Secretary. One, I think your points are spot on. Even though it's a Coast Guard mission to do drug interdiction, the Navy and the Coast Guard have worked together in this for a long time. The LCS presents some great attributes, as you've pointed out. One of them is a gigantic mission bay, if needed. So the ability to support General Guillot and Admiral Halsey, both Northern Command and the Southern Command commander, for missions south of the border, I think are a great use of that vessel, and it would allow us to free up DDGs to do other things. So I think there's great potential there. We have had some challenges with our hull mechanical electrical system, particularly on the Freedom class. We've addressed those through a combining gear fix, so I think those missions can be well served by LCS, allowing our DDGs maybe to use for another mission in Homeland Defense for General Guillot, like an out-of-area deployer from either our west or east coast. So we will look at these platforms, and we will field the best Navy we can for the budget we have to do the missions assigned.
Well, we're being flooded with drugs. That's beyond doubt. And it seems to me it's not too wise to holster a weapon such as the LCS in this time. I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, not totally aware of this, but both the chairmen, when I was the chair and he was the ranking member, now he's the chair and I'm the ranking member, we've asked repeatedly for ways in which the LCS, when it fits, when it works, can be repurposed for doing programs as former Chairman Rogers was talking about. And slow to get us a report. The report was not very adequate. And so if you ask somebody back in your office, they can dig up an old file for you. This is something that this committee has been trying to figure out how to be best use for these ships when it works. We know that they won't work for everything. Some of them need to be retired in that. I want to be clear on that. But this committee's been asking for this for a long time, and I just thought maybe you'd want to know that.
Thank you. I'll look into that. We're very good at putting together reports and studies and hiding them and getting to us. So I'm working on getting through that as fast as possible. We will look into it. We're spending a lot of time, honestly, trying to come up with the appropriate force structure given the budget that we have and the budget issues we have with some of the other programs. So we have some tough decisions to make and tough trade-offs. And that's really what we're going through as we speak.
Thank you. Mr. Lauro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I know there's been a discussion in my absence about the Virginia-class submarine contract. And so I don't want have you be repetitive, but I just wanted to, a couple of things in this area. And we know that the contract announcement came at the end of April. We were supposed to get it at the end of February. But the April 30th contract modification indicated that future Virginia-class procurement will not be conducted through, quote, block multi-year contracts, as has previously been the case, but instead through one-off cost-plus incentive fee contracts. You've noted that the April 30th contract modification that obligated the December continuing resolution money was renegotiated to appropriately, quote, share risk between the Navy and the industry, end quote. You have indicated that this will serve as a template for future shipbuilding contracts. Whatever the contracting method that the Navy uses, we have the same goal, getting production back on schedule and on budget. Can you explain in more detail how shifting contract mechanisms will achieve that goal and create, as you described, quote, more value for the American taxpayer?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member, and again, thank you for the support to this committee for the Virginia. I think at the end of the day, we had a very tight time frame in which to try to get something put together quickly in order to continue the production on Virginia. What we ended up doing was we had a cost-plus contract, which was eating us alive, and as you delay out schedule,
Right.
you know, that's pretty
Right.
tough. So we had to get money to them for workforce. We had to send a demand signal to the private sector to put money into their facilities and invest. I think what I liked about what we were able to do on this contract is we shifted it from cost plus with a cap of, call it 100, with 130% ceiling, to fixing it up to 86% of the cost, but we brought the ceiling up to 138%. So we ended up fixing the price more on this, which our view was to put pressure on them to try to perform and get quicker. So the template is going to be more of a fixed price with some incentives. And I think what we're missing to some extent is incenting them to move faster. So in a cost-plus contract, the longer you wait, the more money you make. And that's what we have.
Right.
And, you know, we have to look also at one of the things, you know, again, and it's still early, but we have to figure out who else can help us build these, and if there's modules we can have done somewhere else to get this done, because we have a sole source supplier, and that is a big constraint, and there are a number of infrastructure constraints that exist as well, both at the public shipyards and at the private shipyards. So to give you an example, one of the workers I met at Norfolk told me that she has to get to the office, she has to get to the yard at 5 in the morning. Her shift starts at 7 because the parking is so bad that she wants to get a spot because she has to get home to her child after her shift's over. That's crazy. We need to fix that, and we need to come up with some ways to do that. But specifically to your question, we were able to fix this now. And I think when we get to the next contract, we will look to try to modify that more and have more shared risk with them, which is kind of locking in margins, locking in numbers, and also trying to rationalize the supply base. I think, you know, we've done some very good work with 3D printing, which the Admiral can talk about in Danville. I visited a company on the West Coast that does 3D printing that I think has what appears to be a pretty good solution to our munitions problem, potentially. We have to get more advanced. We need to try things. This is a very, it's a thing the Navy does not like to do. And we need to get better at that.
Mm-hmm. I just would say the fixed price and again, just tracking what those incentives are, so that we don't find ourselves back in the situation where you've got the cost plus issue, and obviously as you spread it out, there's much more money involved. But we try to get that under control. So I appreciate what you're doing, and would want to really understand our regular communication about how that's working, and what that means in dollars and cents, and what that means, and using that model. it's important for us to know what these models are, as my colleagues have said, because we're dealing with the money here, you know, and being able to really be able to get you what you need, but not at, you know, at any price at all, and production being slower than it usually is.
I understand the frustration. You know, I've been on it 50 days, and I feel like I'm in a perpetual game of whack-a-mole whenever I find something new. I don't have great news. I don't think it's going to be good. I'm going to be very honest. Yeah. The numbers are eye-opening to me. I am still trying to get through it and really sort through what's real, what's on us, and what's on them.
Thank you.
I'm tired of the COVID excuse. I'm tired of a lot of these things. I hear, you know, we have a 139-year-old facility. I'm like, when you signed the contract, it was 134 years old. So I'm not sure that that's my problem.
Thank you.
And so we're working on that.
Great. Thank you. And we want to be helpful in that. Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more quick question?
Real quick.
Okay, very, very quick. This is just about the future of military shipbuilding. Let me just say it this way. With Congress, we've invested billions of dollars in the submarine industrial base. We need a clear sense of what oversight and accountability mechanisms the Navy has in place to ensure, again, that the money is well spent. And we need to know how you're going to continue to engage with this subcommittee and the Congress to ensure that we're kept up to date on the Navy's work in this area. Very, very quickly, we've seen the Army last 2 weeks. Secretary Hegseth, he's interested in reevaluating programs, force structure, surface-wide. We received little or no warning on those changes. And I would hope that if the Secretary's office is looking at something similar for the Navy and the Marine Corps, that we would receive advance notice and would be consulted on the decisions. And can you commit to that?
I'm sorry, give me the question you're asking me.
I want you to commit to letting us know what, what restructuring is, what services, like Hegseth just said, we're going to reevaluate the force structure service-wide. No warning about any of that, and we don't know if they're planning anything similar for the Navy or for the Marine Corps, and we need to be engaged and involved in that conversation.
So obviously the administration has, the President and Secretary Hegseth have put forth a plan to flatten and streamline the flag officer and general officer structure to ensure decisions are being made closer to the warfighter. And so we are looking at that as we speak, per that instruction and complying with that order. We are trying to figure out how to streamline and make things more efficient, and we are doing our best as to that, and that's what I can tell you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, I would just say this to you. If those conversations are going on with regard to the Navy, that's something that this committee should know about and be engaged and involved in. We just don't want to be told that this is it. This is the fait accompli. Hell no. Hell no. So I'm hoping that you can commit.
We don't want a failure to communicate.
Got it.
Okay. Mr. Womack.
Mr. Captor, do we need to yield to Siri for a question?
I surprise myself all the time.
Happens to all of us. Thanks, gentlemen, for your service to our country. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. The first one fits into the category of a good plan executed now is probably better than a perfect plan executed way too late. So this is about, and I realize the level of classification here, so we can't get too far down the weeds, but maybe in general terms, on next generation Navy fighters, the Air Force has moved out on their plan. Navy has not. I'm concerned about the risk associated with delays. And without getting too far down in the weeds, can you help me understand how we mitigate risk and when we might expect a down select on that platform? Because it's if everybody understands that there's a move out date for China on Taiwan of 2027, those are the kinds of things that cause us to have to look at our acquisition process and wonder if we're operating from behind. So I don't know, Mr. Secretary, if you want to take that one or if the Admiral wants to take it, then I'll come back with an amphib question for General Smith.
I think we're still looking at the force structure of manned, unmanned, and understanding what is the right balance and how do we do that going forward. So we are committed, and I'm committed to making sure we have the ability to fight in the future and meet next generation threats. So that's what we will look to do, and we're still working through that. We're testing a number of unmanned platforms. My own bias is manned and unmanned combined is probably best, but I'm going to leave it to the experts as we learn more and more. We've learned a lot from Ukraine. We've learned a lot from some of these other conflicts and how we should fight, and I think that needs to inform our posture going forward.
Admiral?
Just a comment on the 6th-gen fighter. You know, I've had the pleasure of briefing this committee on carrier survivability and the Navy composition in the Western Pacific. The 6th-gen fighter is key to air wing of the future. So to me, the carrier is the most survivable airfield we have, period, end stop. The 6th-gen fighter is a keystone of our air wing of the future, which includes, as the Secretary indicated, manned and unmanned aircraft. And that's the beauty of an air wing, is that it can be updated and still be serviced by the aircraft carrier, which is a capital investment, which we're going to have for a long, long time. To me, it is the joint force that is going to win against China. That's the Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Army, and the Space Force. And the Navy brings mobility, which is our chief attribute for you and the chief confounding thing for China. So the carrier is a big piece of that because it brings mass volume fires over and over and over again, where a submarine will have to be reloaded and a destroyer will have to be reloaded, maybe at some place, and take it offline. That carrier's got sustainment power, and the thing that delivers it is a 5th-gen and 6th-gen fighter into the future.
But back to the technologies, I realize that we're deliberating the emerging technologies that will be central into the decision-making process. These doggone technologies are changing like every day, right? I mean, we're learning stuff from the battlefield all the time. And the private sector is doing a fine job of helping understand how these developing technologies are emerging as quickly as they are. So at what point in time will we say, you know, time's up, we've got to move out, we've got to make a decision and go? When does that happen?
I think at the end of the day, look, we need to create more flexibility in our procurement, okay? We need to be able to adapt faster. We're very slow. We're putting ships in the water that are 30% obsolete by the time they get into the water. That's a bad thing, and we need to fix that. So I don't have a specific answer to your question, Congressman. I think we're going to look at that. We are studying each program line by line and trying to understand this. I think the companies that currently serve us would tell you, oh, we got to do this immediately. I'm not sure because of the speed at which technology is moving. What we're seeing in advanced manufacturing is changing daily. And so what we will be able to do today versus 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's going to take a while. I think this comes back to my earlier comment about what our force posture is going to look like. I think what I found in business is the best way to be successful is not to be reactive. It's to say, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And then work your way backwards to get there. Don't try to work to it, work back from it. And we're still in that process. I don't know if you've got it.
I think, Secretary, you covered it. But I just wanted to speak to the operational benefit of a 6th-gen fighter, to the joint force. We're going up against a world-class adversary potentially, and we got to have world-class equipment. And for the aviation component of air wing in the future, that's a 6th-gen fighter.
Got it. Finally, with the remaining time I have, General Smith, you and I have talked many times about amphibs, and I'm very concerned about the readiness rates that are critical to your ARGs and what these rates do in terms of adding risk to our ability to deploy. So I'm going to throw you that softball because I know you have some strong feelings about your amphibious fleet.
Well, sir, I'm working closely with my shipmate, Jim Kilby, Admiral Kilby, to bring the readiness rates of amphibs up to where they need to be. We base our amphibious readiness on 80% A sub O, 80% readiness, and the current readiness is in the 40th percentile. So it's got to come up. There's only two solutions, either increase readiness or increase the number of ships, or a combination thereof. But there's a thing called the Optimized Fleet Response Plan, OFRP, that I'm committed to. I know Jim Kilby's committed to. So we are working hard to produce the number of amphibs required to produce a 3.0 ARG-MU. That is one amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit off the East Coast, one off the West Coast, and the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of Okinawa, Japan, episodically deployed. Again, it's the Swiss Army knife of the Joint Force. It can do a whole lot of everything and a lot of combat. It can do humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. It can evacuate embassies, can reassure allies and partners, but it can do combat. It can knock down Houthi drones. It can take out targets in the Red Sea, and it can keep sea lanes of communication open. So we think it's a good investment. And again, it's the Swiss Army knife, but I'm committed to getting those amphibious readiness rates up, and I know Admiral Kilby is as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Case.
Secretary, first of all, commendation on kicking off your tenure with a listening tour. I think that's great that you get out of Washington and see what's happening out in the field, both here and internationally. On the international front, I've asked many of your colleagues that have come in here this year about the extent to which our military is now required to carry a heavier load in our relationships with other countries around the world, friends and allies, but not just friends and allies, but potential friends and allies, and the consequences really of withdrawing from some of our other instruments of national outreach, for example, USAID. And as that has happened, we obviously have some pretty nervous, and the combination of other things, tariffs or whatever, we have some pretty nervous friends and allies out there, and our mill-to-mill relationships have really carried the day in past comparable situations. I guess what I'd like to hear you talk about is, what are the opportunities from your perspective in your responsibility to expand those mill-to-mill relationships? So I'm thinking about, for example, more joint training exercises, more just people out there on the road, as you've done, meeting a little bit more with their colleagues around the world. Is that a conscious part of your planning, your policy?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Yes, I mean, in Korea, I met with the Minister of Defense and the acting president at the time. And in Japan, I met with their equivalent of the Joint Chiefs head and their Minister of Defense as well. I think we are doing a number of joint exercises, and I'll let Admiral Kilby talk about them because I think they're pretty impressive, what we've been doing in the Indo-Pacific. But I think, look, my message to the allies is the same as the President said, which is, we're your ally, but it's time for you to pay your fair share, and I think that is the basic message. And what I've seen to some extent is, in some cases, we are definitely seeing that, and in some, we're seeing the reluctance and the political aspects of it. From the military side, they want to spend it. They know they need it. They know they need to have the same capability. And I think, candidly, we need to attack even the manufacturing aspect of this better. I think we need to be speaking more about how do we both create our forces to make sure that if we got into a major conflict that we can maybe depend on them to help manufacture some things as well. So I think that's a critical component. I've met with the head of the Spanish Navy, the head of the Italian Navy, and recently one of the ministers of defense from the UK came in.
Thank you for that. And I think that I guess my only response to you is I think we can both have higher expectations of our allies and partners and maintain a much stronger military relationship as we all get through a little bit of change and dislocation in those relationships. I don't think it's an either or. If I could just shift on you, Admiral, you probably have something to say on this, but I do want to shift quickly. Admiral Franchetti, of course, came up with her navigation plan in 2024, refined in Project 33 in terms of a time frame. President Trump came out with his Restoring America's Maritime Dominance in April, just a month ago. And I'm trying to figure out how that all fits together in terms of what we have to do in terms of funding you. Has anything fundamentally changed in the goals, or are there just massive changes that you're going to go through where we've got to go, oh, wait a minute, now we've got to go in a different direction, at least consider it, or are these all pretty much aligned going into the future?
My opinion is they're aligned. Now, Admiral Franchetti's focus was 2027, as is mine. So the goals we were pursuing are goals to get after a force that's as ready as possible by January 1st, 2027. The first goal is ready platforms. That's where the 80% combat surge ready comes from, where 80% of my aircraft, ships, and submarines that are not in depot level available are available to the fleet commander if needed. We're still going to follow the process that General Smith talked about to get them fully certified. But if they need to get called over early, I want to know that those ships are armed and manned and ready to go for the call. So those are good targets, and we're still moving out on them.
Okay, so I mean, when we look at matching up what has been done in the last year against the budget requests, we'll see a continuity. I suppose that's what. I just don't want to get surprised at anything coming out like, oh, wow, we're not doing that anymore.
I do not think you'll be surprised.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Judge Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for what you do for our sailors and our Marines. You have a big-time job. Admiral Kilby, you and others have acknowledged that relying on expensive missile systems to counter low-cost threats like drones is unsustainable. What is the Navy's plan to rapidly field directed energy systems like the Meritanized Enduring High-Level Laser for shipboard use, and how are you incorporating lessons from the Army's development to reduce cost and per engagement and preserve the missile piles for higher and more important threats?
Sir, I don't restrict that only to directed energy, but that's certainly an area we're interested in. We have a Helios installed on the Preble, which is located in Japan. We had some problems with testing, but now we're up to 1/3 of the power, and we're going to continue to test that weapon system to make sure it works. I've got buyer's remorse. When I worked with General Smith in our last life, I was the N9, which is the person procuring systems. And I was focused on a laser between 500 kilowatts and 1 megawatt because that's what it takes to knock down an anti-ship cruise missile. I wish I had been a little bit more thoughtful and taken a lesser power weapon that would have been capable against UASs. In the meantime, we're going to pursue that testing on the Helios system, but we're strapping on a lot of systems on the Ford Strike Group, which is going to deploy next from the East Coast, like a Coyote missile system, which is a much cheaper version of a munition to send at a counter UAS threat, or a high-velocity projectile from the 5-inch gun. That's a very more inexpensive way to get at it, or Hellbow longbow missile, which is a more inexpensive way to get at that. So we're going to put those on that system. They're not fully integrated with the combat system, but I think they'll be very effective, and we'll test them out at sea, and then we'll procure them at scale if we need to.
That's good to hear. Secretary Phelan, workforce development to revitalize maritime industrial base is crucial in speed to speed up shipbuilding and improve readiness. Are there currently or planned partnerships between Department of the Navy and Texas-based community colleges, trade schools, or universities to grow the near generation skilled shipbuilding and maintenance workforce?
As a product of a Texas college, I wish I knew the answer to that, but I'm going to let Admiral Kilby answer that question. We are doing a lot of programs as it relates to shipbuilding and at a lot of different schools. I do believe we do have them in Galveston, I think.
Yeah, we've got to expand this, sir. So one of the things the Secretary referred to was 2 weeks ago I went to Danville, Virginia, where we have an accelerated training and defense manufacturing center. And that's an exciting proposition for me. We used SIB money to invest in the Navy in Danville, Virginia. I watched five disciplines being trained, 8 hours, three sections a day, so 24/7, welders, non-destructive testers, QAs, additive manufacturing, and a thing called CNC. They had 16 CNC machines. At Norfolk Naval Shipyard, I've got 2. This part was produced in Danville, Virginia. It is a part required to fix a helo hanger door. When we went to go look at how to make that part or if it was available in the stock system, it was not. It would take 40 weeks to make this part through traditional means. Danville did it in 19 days. And if I did it tomorrow, it would be 5 days because I don't have to find the IP and get it run in the system and do a fit up. So to me, that is the promise. And we need to do that all over our country. Rep Captor, we talked about how this could happen in Ohio. That system is going to produce 900 people a year that at a 90% placement rate that go into the defense industrial base. That is the way to buy back our system so it has more tradesmen in it than it has today. We used to have 33% of our workforce was in that category. Now it's 11. My son's going to welding school at Northern Virginia Community College. I hope he goes to Danville, Virginia to get his cert.
I'm very much looking to make the trades work and have been for now about 10 years and invested quite a bit of money in trades in many of our states because I've seen this coming and hoping that when we get the trades going, it'll work fine. And 3D printing is a real solution. I just talked to a guy last night who's working, he was at an event I was at in Austin where he told me his business was 3D printing for the Navy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And I was glad to hear that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman.
Ms. Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Admiral, and General. It's nice to be with you. I wanted to ask quickly about the Fallon Training Range training complex, which is undergoing a significant modernization project. Can you outline where we are in this process, Admiral?
Well, a lot of work, Congresswoman, on that, and I'm appreciative of that. To protect that range, which is a world-class range for us, as you know, not only do all our air wings get certified in there, but we've made a significant MILCON investment in a training facility to include other communities in the Navy, the surface community as well as the aviation community, in a live virtual constructive manner. So that's one of our 7 targets, Congressman Case, as well, is to increase the ability to conduct training anywhere we want, wherever we want on our ships and our ranges. So Fallon is the centerpiece of that.
Great. You spoke with our Secretary Senator Jackie Rosen during your confirmation hearing. It's my understanding that the Navy is currently working to meet the requirement to give full compensation for grazing permit holders who are being displaced. The current offered compensation, I understand, is said to be inadequate, and so have you had an opportunity to review this, and could you give an update to that, where that stands?
I'm planning to go out to Fallon, I think the end of this month or very early next month for myself to go see it. As you know, I'm trying to balance the fairness to the grazing permit holders and the American taxpayer. I think that my understanding is the bid ask, I'm going to call it, is not that wide, and we're trying to figure out how to collapse that down. I don't have an update since then, but I figured I'm going to go there and try to see if I can get that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Fixed.
I wanted to just touch on force structure review as you were talking about the need to cut the bureaucracy. 56,000 acquisition personnel. We have, but at the same time, I'm hearing an incredible time compressing need to bring new capabilities, AI, directed energy, autonomous systems. Right now, you have a hiring freeze. We have a deferred resignation program. I'm just wondering, how are you managing and prioritizing who gets cut, who stays in light of this modernization need?
So if you look at the workforce, there's basically about 12% of it attrits every year, and there was about another 8% that basically was in 1 year. So if you look at what they've really done is they've offered up money to those, and a lot of people have taken advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Now, we've identified all those areas that are critical where we cannot lose people, and so that has not been offered to them. I think the next round is really to make sure that we are rationalizing and making sure we're not losing key people in other areas. To me, it's just a question of, are there things that we can streamline and make it better? You talk about AI and what it can do. It is an incredibly powerful tool. I used it in my business before I retired, and I had the capability of about 8 people when I was done training that system. So it's very powerful, and I think it can be used in different ways. But I think it's very additive to people. So again, it's a tool, I think, that helps people. I can let the Admiral kind of go into more specifics on some of the other things as well.
We're working through those people that elected to take DRP right now. So we're really looking at the structure and saying, how do we make sense of this and get the organization we need? I'm a shipyard fan. We lost 1,918 people from our shipyards. But when I looked at the specificity, and we're still analyzing what trades did we lose from, was it overhead, was it direct labor? The rough magnitude is 2%, twice the number of people in overhead from the trades. So to me, there's an opportunity to rebalance here, because we want that ratio to be 20% indirect, 80% direct, and we were a little out of balance. So there's an opportunity here to right-size the force, but we do need people like structural engineers to go adjudicate problems when we come across them. So we've got to come through that and do exactly what the Secretary said and get the most effective organization. So we're doing that work now.
It's good to hear.
Mr. Elsie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Admiral, you're wearing 8 stars and you're not getting paid enough for it, and I just want you to know you're doing a tremendous job. General Force Design has finally reached escape velocity, and you've withstood the attacks, and I'm glad to see that it's coming to fruition. And Mr. Secretary, I've never seen anybody work so hard, travel so much, and learn as much as you have in only 50 days and taken on this gigantic job. Our entire top of the force structure in the Navy Marine Corps team is understaffed. You're still waiting on folks, and so are you, and you're doing a tremendous job. Our Navy, our joint force, and our future combatant commanders need the Navy's 6th-generation fighter, or the FAXX, as it's now called. Relying only on the Air Force's 6th-gen fighter, called the NGAD, or now the F-47, it doesn't solve our air superiority challenge. And neither does just CCA on the F-18 or the F-35 off of aircraft carriers. I'm a fervent supporter of the F-47, and I would have done what was necessary to save it. It's basic math. We need more airframes, land-based and carrier-based, and we need to complicate our adversaries' targeting. And we do that by outsticking them, or, in other words, having aircraft that have longer range with weapons that have longer range so the carrier can stand off and hit the enemy before they can hit us. We do that with AIM-174B and CCA on Gen 6 Navy fighter. And industry is ready to do this, no matter what anybody says. I'm kind of getting tired of the bureaucratic brigade delaying our mission to provide for the warfighters. We win with both the FAXX and NGAD, not one or the other. A 3-year delay is a de facto cancellation and a win for China, and Xi Jinping is watching. One of the reasons we're even having this conversation is because of a broken acquisition system and systems commands that slow us down. What DIU and AFWorks can do in weeks or months, NAVSEA takes years to do. They either need to get better or get doged. Let's start with the mandated flag officer reductions by focusing on the Navy Yard and freeing up some housing space. So, Admiral Kilby, I just want you to, you've already mentioned that the carrier is the most survivable airfield we have. Can you elaborate a little bit on range and what Gen 6 and 174 bring?
Sure. The 6th Gen fighter has some capabilities that we need to counter the PRC. Those are signatures, those are range, those are different engines, those are all the things that will make it survivable. The Air Force and Navy have different missions, but we're going against the same threat. So if that threat dictates a pivot to that 6th Gen fighter, then the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps and the Army and the Space Force need to bring all that to bear as a joint force to be capable. So I mentioned the air wing of the future. This is kind of the lead sled dog with MQ-25 to shape that out and understand what that looks like. Not only does the 6th Gen fighter replace a 5th Gen fighter, but it also replaces the Growler. So that's a electronic attack aircraft capability that's important in this fight because of the electronic warfare capability it brings.
Absolutely, and I'd like to point out that the Chinese are showing us what they've got, and it's 2 Gen 6 fighters, and they're building more aircraft carriers. So aircraft carriers are absolutely viable. General Smith, since we're talking about NAVSEA and all their fine work they're doing, can you share some more details on how the Marine Corps plans to fill the LSM gap until we and the Navy can deliver your suitable platform 8 years late?
Well, sir, I can. What I would say is we are looking for something that we can get now, landing ship as a replicant for a landing ship medium. The landing ship medium is purpose-built. It's designed to move and be an inter-island connector. In the short term, we're looking at using LCU 2000s. We're looking at using leased stern landing vessels so we can get our TTPs, our tactics, techniques, and procedures right until we can get the LSM that's purpose-built for us.
I would like to add, we're also going to man 2 EPFs. So we have a challenge with our MSC force now. I've committed to work with MSC to have a CivMar crew on 2 EPFs that serve the Marine Corps in this role until we can cover down on this gap.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Ms. Capter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. Congratulations to you. And also, Admiral Kilby and General Smith, thank you for your lifelong service to liberty. You are appreciated and all those under your command. Secretary Phelan, I think you are the first person that's ever come before this committee within the first paragraph of your formal presentation. You mentioned the term defense industrial base. In the same paragraph, you talked about the trips that you've taken, the valuable trips to the Atlantic coast and to the Pacific. Well, I come from industrial America. And when I heard defense industrial America, I thought, all right. We're not from the Gulf of America. We are Erie and Ontario, Michigan, Superior, Huron. And back in World War II, Admiral Ernest King, who served as the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations, came from a place called Lorain, Ohio. And what I didn't hear you say, and I'm doing this purposely just because I have the moment, there are shipyards in Cleveland, Monroe, Marinette, Sturgeon Bay, Toledo, in our region. And we also have the phenomenal capabilities to make steel. We almost lost it, but we've struggled to come back. And the Great Lakes are America's steel kingdom. We have all the strategic metals. We have nuclear tooling and machining because of the nuclear industry and what we do with them. We have electric welding. We make airframes, big ones. We do Mars boosters. The amount of talent this takes from people who actually do the work is extraordinary, and America left us behind. So people might describe their districts as agricultural or tourism or other skills, but we are industrial America. And we invite you to come see us sometime. Bring anyone you want. We tried to work with the Department of Defense in many ways to help in our school systems to attract younger people into some of the skills that are needed. That has been harder than the Mars booster. So I mention this because you seem to care about that. We have underutilized shipyards. We have phenomenal workers. They do tooling, they do machining, they do things I can't do. When we repair, it's hard enough to make the Abrams tank, but then when you have to repair it, that takes you to a different level. And we have people that do that. So America has a need, and I just want to put our part of America on the map. Thank you for listening to that request, and you are welcome anytime. I also wanted to ask, and I don't know which of you gentlemen could answer this, over the past year, the USS Truman has faced several incidents in the Red Sea. In December, an F-18 from the USS Truman, as you well know, was mistakenly shot down by the USS Gettysburg. And within the last 30 days, the same carrier lost 2 F-18s to the ocean within a week of each other during operations against the Houthis. What might be done to prevent further such losses and ensure the safety of our service members in that region?
Ma'am, I'll take this and yield to the Secretary. There are 4 incidents. There's one other incident. There was a collision. All those incidents on Truman are under investigation right now. Accountability actions are being taken or will be taken. And when those are complete, I will come brief you. I commit to you to come brief you on those specific incidents. We are committed to learning what happened and preventing it from happening again. And so until those come out, I can't give you specifics, but I can tell you we're going to build those types of scenarios that those ships and aircraft were in and train to it when we do our composite unit training exercise, which certifies a strike group to deploy.
Thank you, Admiral, very much. And finally, what steps are being taken to ensure the operations in regions like CENTCOM and EUCOM are not undermined by the increased focus on the Indo-Pacific? I'm not against what you're doing in the Indo-Pacific, but how can the Navy maintain global maritime security in CENTCOM and EUCOM with these other commitments?
Well, ma'am, I just tell you that every one of those combatant commanders has a Navy assigned to it, a Navy component assigned to it. In the case of Fifth Fleet, that's the NAVCENT commander, Admiral Wyckoff, and the Fifth Fleet. And their job is to manage and operate those forces in the case of CENTCOM for General Kurilla. So that won't change. We are focused on the Pacific, to be sure, but we're focused on wherever the nation calls us to go, whether it be EUCOM, CENTCOM, SOUTHCOM, or INDOPACOM. So you've got our commitment, and we train our forces to be ready to do anything in any of those AORs. That's our writ to you.
Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady. Mr. Anderholt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, glad to have you here today and enjoyed chatting with you earlier. The AUKUS partnership between the United States, the UK, and Australia is now in its 4th year. And since then, we've made a lot of progress on both Pillar 1 for submarines and Pillar 2 for advanced capabilities. What are some of the lessons that learned from the first couple of years, and what can we expect for, say, for the next 4 years? Ms. Secretary, I'll address this one to you.
I'll give you my 50 days of observation and then probably pass it off to Admiral Kilby.
Okay.
But I think what I would say is look, I think it's they're important allies. I think we're learning a lot just trying to figure out how to do this together. I would say from my own perspective, some of the questions I've been trying to understand is how much brain power is this taking from us, because subs are very important and how we do it. And how we produce these, but also being able to do bases and repairs in another country, I think is a good skill set for us to learn and understand better. And I believe we're learning from that and learning how to build things. I'm still trying to assess the real costs of this to us, not just dollars and cents, but brain power. And so, I look forward to chatting with you about it.
Let me ask you this. Would you support an AUKUS collaborative campus that would bring together our three nations whose focus would be promoting further cooperation and meeting both our Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 objectives of the United States?
Look, I think it's an interesting idea to look at. It's harder for me to answer because I think you've got a lot of distance, and we have Australians currently, I think, at our base in Pearl Harbor, and it's moving faster with them right now than the UK. So a campus, I think I'd have to understand the concept a little better and look at it. So I think it's certainly worth looking at, but I'd like to let
Admiral, you want to? Just a specific, sir. There's tech sharing we've got to work through from a lessons learned perspective. For AUKUS Pillar 1, I think we've got it about right with our schooling now. Just kind of give you the laydown of where we're at. We've got 100 Royal Australian Navies in our nuke pipeline right now. Those are our schools, so they benefit by graduating from the schools. Ultimately, they'll have to create their own school for now. We've got 120 Australians in Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. And then the conduct of avails together in Sterling is important. So I think that campus idea, just not knowing it fully, would be more aligned to Pillar 2 than Pillar 1, because our system, that conveyor belt needs to keep working. And I don't know that we're the Navy, we want to change our process right now from nuclear production and how we qualify our enlisted sailors and officers. So we'd really have to look at that to see if there's mutual benefit.
Okay, before my time runs out, just want to mention that, of course, many think of Alabama as an Army and space state, but support for the Navy is large and it's actually growing. I'm especially encouraged by the recent investments that are in Mobile down on our coast to expand our nation's maritime industrial base in support of such critical missions as submarine production and AUKUS. Since the initial investment in September of 24, what are the next steps to develop the Mobile Navy Yard site and expand the shipbuilding capacity there?
Well, I think AUSO has done a great job turning those investments, and they're going to contribute to that 2.33 problem we talked about earlier by producing modules for our submarine construction. I think there's other opportunities too, sir, in the unmanned world. So when we think about a hybrid fleet, which is going to have traditional manned destroyers, cruisers, frigates, just like we're talking about aircraft unmanned, there are unmanned ships that could be built at non-traditional shipyards right now that could be very helpful to us. One of our focus areas is non-traditional sea denial, and that's the delivery of unmanned capabilities undersea, on the surface, and in the air that can help in a 2027 scenario in the Western Pacific. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to expand in non-traditional vendors and shipyards.
Thank you. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the ranking member. And thank you, gentlemen, for not only for being here, for your service. If I could just follow up Mr. Adderholt's question, Admiral. Can you talk about the integration of autonomous systems and unmanned systems with manned systems? I know it's an attempt to reduce risk to personnel, distribute operations, expand maritime domain awareness. What have you learned over the last several years in terms of the development and experimentation about how, what insights have you learned and sort of how have you used that, and will it influence the long-term integration of autonomous systems and manned systems?
So, sir, we have 3 fleet areas principally that are working this now: Task Force 59 and 5th Fleet, Task Force 66 and 6th Fleet, and the 4th Fleet. Now, there are different needs for those. I would tell you, necessity is the mother of invention. So Admiral Cooper, when he was the 5th Fleet commander, found himself ship poor. So he invested in unmanned technologies to do maritime domain awareness with things like a sail drone, which is a persistent vessel that can do maritime domain awareness. Similarly, 4th Fleet has adopted that. The work being done in the 6th Fleet is interesting because it ports right over to support Admiral Kaler and Admiral Paparo in the Indo-Pacific, because those same technologies can be used there in a manner that's effective. So it's almost a battle lab for the Indo-Pacific. So there's learning across all our fleets. The geography drives the use case for what you need for that, but our initial focus is this thing called non-traditional sea denial. Ultimately, though, I want to get to a hybrid fleet that engages our unmanned capabilities alongside our ships, supporting our submarines in the air wing of the future for manned to unmanned teaming. So to me, that's the future state. And last week I was in San Diego with Admiral Paparo and Admiral Kaler, looking at their experimentation and rehearsal of these very technologies.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to, maybe if I can, just expand on the Indo-Pacific and the use. Undersea dominance, I understand, is critical to deterrence and force projection. I'm concerned about what appears to be a little bit of a mismatch between rising demand for anti-submarine warcraft capabilities and relatively flat funding for key enablers like sonobuoys. I think I'm saying that right. It's a weird word. Inventory levels are reportedly well below the global floor, which raises questions about anti-submarine warfare. Could you just
I think you're spot on. We got ourselves in a non-effective position for sonobuoy manufacturers, but we've increased our sonobuoys for everything but the Mac buoy now. So we want to get back to that global floor. We will continue to invest in it. We appreciate your support in that investment, and it's a key enabler for us to invest in. But now we have two companies, Sparta and Lockheed Martin, that are individually producing sonobuoys. They're not producing something that have to be married up together. I think that's a much better solution. And my last stats are about 7% increase is what we're shooting for every year. So I think that is an area we definitely need to continue to invest in.
Very good. I just wanted to come back to something. I'm new to this committee, and when we had Secretary Driscoll, I think he said something, and I'm paraphrasing, essentially that there were 35,000 people in the Army related to acquisitions. But upon further conversation, it turned out that it seemed like there were about 5,000. The rest were engineers and people who were involved with sustainment. So, Mr. Secretary, when you say that there's 56,000 people, help educate me. What does that mean? Are they actually all doing acquisitions, or are they doing other things that relate to sustainment and making sure that the engineering and the contracts, et cetera, are appropriate?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. There's actually close to 80,000 if you count third-party and contractors, but the total number is 55,833, of which 51,438 are civilian. In cost estimating, there's 700. In financial management, there's 2,127. In contracting, there's 7,959. In engineering and technical management, there's 27,031. In lifestyle logistics, there's 7,154. In program management, there's 7,483. Test and evaluation is 2,990. Other, which I'm still waiting for, is 389.
So, and I see I'm out of time, and I apologize. Perhaps we could get just a definition of where all those areas are and what when the appropriations request comes in, how that will match up against those.
Be happy to follow up with you on it.
Thank you. I yield back, sir.
Thank the gentleman for that answer. Mr. Fleischman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony today. Very, very helpful to me. I'm relatively new to the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. I've chaired Energy and Water, which of course has the NNSA portfolio, so very involved with our nuclear arsenal. But a little point of privilege, Admiral Kilby, I want to thank you. Our office asked for a defense fellow, and we finally got one. And it is Lieutenant Davids, who is behind me, doing a great job, an Annapolis grad, and done a great job, a Navy aviator, but he's been so helpful to me in a lot of the conversations we've been having. So it is vicarious to you in the Navy that I say thank you for that. Yes, sir. I'm going to ask a question about the Navy's demand for tactical nuclear weapons. As Chairman of Energy and Water, I have the NNSA facility in the Y-12 security complex in my district. I'm very interested in the health and effectiveness of our nuclear capabilities. Our boomers, sir, are the survivable leg of the triad,
and they will continue to be a critical deterrent to nuclear-armed adversaries. I believe non-strategic nuclear weapons are a vital complement to our credible deterrent in the Pacific. I'm a strong proponent of the nuclear sea-launched cruise missile program, and I believe it's essential that we quickly provide INDOPACOM with flexible capability to deter adversary escalation. The ability to deploy non-strategic nuclear warheads on a fast-track submarine and perhaps eventually surface ships greatly increases our credibility. Recognizing, sir, that we are limited on our launch tubes afloat, it is only necessary to have a small number of tactical nuclear weapons to significantly complicate our adversary's decision calculus. I think given this dangerous capability gap, the emphasis should be on speed. We do not need to reinvent the wheel when we're talking about a capability we recently had in service only 15 years ago. My question, sir, to both Secretary Finland and Admiral Kilby, can you share your vision for the SLACM program with this committee, and how is the Navy working to ensure this program does not stall in development purgatory for years when we need a capability as soon as possible? And I'll defer to your answers.
Thanks for your question, sir. I share your opinion. I've had a couple of sessions with Vice Admiral Johnny Wolf, who is the Strategic Programs Office lead who will produce this. He's on target for a new production by 2035. But to your point, he's looked at some alternatives, and we haven't totally briefed the Secretary on those yet, but he's looking at speed and an urgency to get something out sooner. So we need to come through that with our Secretary, but I think there's some possibilities there that we can work to.
Yes, sir. Mr. Secretary?
Look, I think it's an important strategic deterrent and gives the President more flexibility and options to have both for tactical nuclear attacks or non-nuclear attacks. So it's something that I think is an important component to the force, and one that I look forward to learning more with the Admiral on, now that I've learned I didn't know what's going on with it. But I will find out.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In my remaining waning time, I'd like to talk about the logistic challenges. I spend most of my time in Congress focused on energy. I'm Energy and Water Chair, all forms of energy. And in 2022, the Navy made a decision to defuel the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility in Hawaii. This removed a strategic fuel reserve of over 250 million gallons of fuel for military operations in the Pacific. My question, for whoever would like to answer, please, is what is your assessment of the sustainability of our supply chains for both our aviation fuel and ship fuel in the context of a protracted conflict in the Pacific? What changes or investments does our Navy need to make to ensure we can adequately supply our ships and aircrafts in a protracted war?
Can I take a whack at this, sir? So we need to have a distributed system. I visited Red Hill. We're committed to doing the work we've agreed to do there, and we'll continue to complete it by 2028 and all the remediation that happens there. But we need to find other sites and distribute them around the Indo-Pacific to make it hard for China, right? We don't want to make it easy for them. So those can be mobile things. They can be like tankers and super tankers. They could be fuel bladders that I've talked about with my good partner, General Smith. But there are ways to sustain ourselves in a different manner that makes it hard for the adversary to confound us. So we're committed to that. There's alternate sites we need to look at for those fuel storages in the Pacific as well.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Diaz-Balart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for what you do for our country. Let me follow up on what Mr. Elzy questioned about and talked about, and whether it's fifth generation, sixth generation, manned or unmanned, because there are open reports out there saying that there could be a potential delay of fielding the aircraft needed for our carriers. Do you feel confident that that's not going to be the case, regardless of what that mix is? And you've talked about that. Are you confident that whatever decision is made, that you will be able to have the adequate platforms on our carriers with no delay for that? Or are we looking at another delay because, decisions have to be made?
Are you asking in general, or are you asking with respect
Well, I mean,
to
again,
specific
without
program?
getting it, because we're here, right? But open sources talk about how we may be looking at, having some pretty serious, 3-year delays on fielding what we may need to be fielding for aircraft carriers.
Look, I think, as I said earlier, we're still trying to sort through the appropriate force posture and the appropriate balance between manned and unmanned and what that should look like. I don't think we can ignore swarm drone technology and where it's going to go and how fast it's going to develop and what that means and what the implications are for the force and 6th gen and fighters. Currently, our carrier is, I think, very, very good. It's a mobile platform. It works very, very well. We will continue to develop that posture and that idea and be able to pivot hopefully as quick as possible. So I think we are still analyzing and looking at it, but I do not believe we're going to do anything that would jeopardize the vulnerability of a carrier.
Right. I mean, again, you all feel confident about that we're not going to, 2 or 3 years down the road, oops, we don't have the capability, we don't have the platforms, whatever that mix may be, on our carriers that we need.
Well, I guess in a reality situation, to be clear, the 6th gen fighter isn't going to come by January 1st, 2027. It's going to take time to develop that and build it into the future. So the 3-year part is a delay if we started the program late, but it would deliver far into the future. But we've got to commit to that because we're going to have aircraft carriers that are going to live in this contested environment, and that's my operational assessment, that we need an air wing of the future that does everything the Secretary just described for the reasons he described it, to pace the threat. So in 3 years, we're going to deliver the fleet we have to be as capable as it can be to counter the PRC. And then we need to build that future fleet moving forward.
Would the gentleman from Florida yield on a budget question?
Of course I would.
Thank you. So it came out this morning that in FY25, we appropriated $453 million. The Navy doesn't have that under contract. And now we're understanding OSD is trying to say that they don't want the $500 million in the reconciliation, they want that pulled from the bill. So I think that's why budgetarily we have some of the questions that we have. So is it true that we don't have the contract signed? Is that imminent to be signed, or is that not going to be signed? And then has OSD asked for the $500 million to come out of the reconciliation bill? Because that's in part why you're getting these questions.
The budget numbers are all over the place, to be perfectly honest, and we're sitting down having meetings daily on different topics and different things. I don't have a great answer for you as it relates to it. It's a number of different programs we're going through is being debated, just like we went through with the Virginia-class contract.
I understand it, Mr. Secretary, but when we appropriate money, $453 million and 25 just for that, that's what that money's for. And it's not, Congress doesn't make it fungible for it to be used in other places. So that's why you're getting the question, and we'll follow up with you on that. Thank you so much. I think
of course, a pleasure to yield to the ranking member. Now, I will be very, I'll get rid of some of the questions that I had because some of my time. You've taken questions about the direct energy.
I'll give the gentleman a couple.
Well, I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman, and because I was going to talk about the sonobuoys, and that seems to be kind of a bright spot, I understand. Torpedoes as well is what I'm hearing. That at least it's a step in the right direction. All right. So, direct energy. Are you, and Admiral, you mentioned that before, and you answered the question. And are you all? I've heard that, for example, the Israelis have some kind of new technology which is really, really interesting, potentially requires less energy, whatever it may be. Are you looking at other alternatives? And by the way, and if you are you able to, if in fact there's a good alternative, I'm not saying there is, that there isn't, are you able to tap into, for example, if there's an alternative that the Israelis might have, to be able to tap into that?
We want to get a workable technology to be effective as in the maritime environment for counter-UAS and other things. I'm open to all that technology and doing it rapidly. I have to work through the steps in the bureaucracy to do that, but I want to be open to it and exposed to it. So, yes, there could be high-powered microwave, could be another technology for us to be effective in that space. So all that is what I call a renewable magazine, where I don't have to load weapons to do that. So that's our focus, is to have an ability to defend our ships so we can use our high-powered or expensive munitions for offense, not defense.
Yeah. But again, if there were an ally, I'm just saying the Israelis, do you have the ability to procure something from an ally on something
I probably don't and have to work through that,
Yeah,
but I do believe that the time is right and the indications are that we can look at things differently and hopefully be more effective and agile. I'm hopeful of that.
Yeah, just please keep us in mind if you think that there's something that we can do
Absolutely.
to help you be more flexible on things like that, if it makes sense, obviously. Anyways, Mr. Chairman, you've been generous with my time. I thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Valadeo.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to our guests for being here today, and I appreciate your service to our country. Admiral Kilby, the Eisenhower... Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start off with a little more question. Admiral Kilby, how is the Navy addressing the combat search and rescue gap in the Pacific, particularly as aircraft crews face longer-range missions and self-supported recoveries without close support of full combat search and rescue task force, as seen in previous conflicts?
I will have to take that question for the record and get back to you for some specifics. I do believe this is in our contested logistics space, and we're looking at how we do this at scale with large numbers of people. But I will take that question for the record and get back to you.
I appreciate that. I've been hearing that a little bit from my home district base. So, and then another question for Admiral Kilby. The Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group fired nearly 800 missiles during its deployment to the Red Sea at a cost of about $1 billion to counter Houthi threats. What is the Navy's plan to pursue more effective or more cost-effective and scalable methods to address these types of asymmetric threats, and how are you ensuring greater transparency and operational reporting going forward?
Well, let me take the first part. I spoke about this a little bit, but we found ourselves in a position where those captains did what they had to do to knock down a threat, and they used expensive missiles to do it, and they've done it and are continuing to do it quite effectively. We want to provide them an alternative where they can defend their ships and other bases and allies in a cheaper, more effective method. So that could be things like a high-powered microwave, or a high-velocity projectile, or a Coyote weapon system from Raytheon that we got from the Army and bolted on that system, or a Hellfire longbow missile. So those are things we're in process with experimenting on the Ford Strike Group, which we'll deploy next. If effective, then we'll procure them at scale. But ultimately, we want to get to the end state we just talked about, where I have a relatively renewable, rechargeable way to have terminal defense and husband my magazines for that offensive capability.
All right. Well, thank you. As the Marine Corps look to leverage artificial intelligence to speed up decision-making and optimize operations, how are you balancing rapid acquisition of these technologies with the need to keep the Marines in control of final decisions, and how are you preparing Marines to confidently challenge or override AI-generated recommendations when necessary?
Yes, sir. We're using our Marine Corps Systems Command, and frankly, we're using our Combat Development Integration Command in Quantico to go after AI. We leverage all of the DoD AI, artificial intelligence agencies. We are always in control. There's always a human on the loop. There doesn't have to be a human in the loop. There has to be a human on the loop who can leverage the autonomy that's brought by an AI system. We have to just determine where the human is on the loop. So I believe we're doing it. I believe that our Systems Command and our folks in Quantico keep us well apprised of how we can leverage artificial intelligence for better decision-making, more rapid fielding, and frankly, more rapid responses. You don't need a human to direct the missile be fired. You need to have a human direct the system to fire at an inbound missile. When it's descending below 4,000 feet and closing in on your ship, the CWIS, the Vulcan Phalanx, is activated. It has permission already. There's just got to be a human on the loop.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Back to Admiral Kilby. Can you provide an update on the progress of Operation Cattle Drive, particularly regarding the modernization of the Navy's IT systems? How many vulnerable legacy systems have been decommissioned to date, and which key systems are currently being prioritized for transition and onboarding?
I'll have to take that question for the record. I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't even know what Operation Cattle Drive is, so I'll get back to you.
Well, when I get to the end of my, we get to the food chain, down the food chain where I'm at, we've run out of questions to ask, so. Someday, I guess, when I'm further up, I get to ask some more.
You get a gold star for stumping the Admiral.
All right, I got a couple more seconds here. Back to the Marine Corps. With the establishment of the Marine Corps' attack drone team and growing demand for low-cost armed first-person view drones, how long will it take to fully equip all registered Marine Corps formations, and how quickly can these systems be fielded compared to more traditional costly platforms?
I don't have a good answer for how long it will take. The answer is we're not fielding them fast enough. I was just visiting our attack drone team a couple of weeks ago. What they're doing with low-cost detritables is stunning. They're turning hundreds of dollars of systems against thousands of dollars of inbound drones or against adversary troop formations. So I don't have an answer for you. But what I can tell you is we can't additive manufacture them fast enough. The Ukrainians are doing it on the cheap, and we're trying to keep ours on the cheap too. We're trying to make sure we build a Ford F-150 pickup truck, not a Denali. And so we're building these as fast as we can, but I would invite you, Congressman, down to our attack drone team at Quantico to get you a first-hand view of what we're doing. We've invested the manpower and the brain power through our Marine Corps Systems Command.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Thank you again for your time. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Recognize the ranking member for any closing comments.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for being here today, and Mr. Secretary, A+. I know that you're very serious about getting back to us on the questions on personnel and the rest. I look forward to it. And then I'm going to submit some questions. Some of them actually have to do, are we back to calling it sea level rise rather than climate change? I'm not sure, or climate resilience. But my questions are going to focus on what's happening in the Arctic and installations, permafrost, all those things that are going to affect what you can do up there. And then the chairman and I, as you know, are very interested in what we can do as far as moving forward with doing some icebreakers. And then also a question for the Marines on the Arctic. I want to make sure, being from the high north, the bold north, whatever you want to call Minnesota these days, I want to make sure that when you're out there participating in exercises that you have everything that you need to practice, do your mission, so that when you're out there doing it in real time that you can come home safely with no frostbite included. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank the gentlelady. Before I want to conclude, I want to thank all of you, Secretary Phelan, Admiral Kilby, General Smith, for your testimony today. And obviously all the subcommittee members are welcome to submit questions for the record, and I would hopefully you can respond in a reasonable time frame. One thing I just want to, on the close, is obviously you heard a lot about the Gen 6 fighter. I think, we've had air dominance since 1942, and we hope to keep it that way. Our men and women are on the ground, don't have to look up. Now maybe with drones they're constantly going to look up, but certainly with high-performance aircraft and be able to control the air is extremely important. And I know you have some short-term decisions you have to make here pretty soon in order to meet the requirements of these contracts. But we have, as you know, a fighter shortfall. I'm not quite, we'll probably put that question for the record, how big a shortfall we have. And obviously, last couple of months, we've lost three F-18s, and that line is shutting down, as you well know. We're going the last of the eight F-18s under construction F-35 are not getting as many as we had hoped. And you know, we're well underway on the Enterprise and the Kennedy aircraft carriers, and so we're going to be flying off aircraft carriers for a long time to come. So, and these are important decisions. I know you're taking it seriously, and we'll submit some questions for the record. We certainly appreciate your being here today, and with that, we are adjourned.